For those of you who don't know me, my name is Johanna Bogle. I'm the Deputy Chief Financial Officer at Great Western Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust in Swindon. I've been the National Senior Responsible Officer for the One NHS Finance Health and Wellbeing Group for nearly a year now, and I find it one of the most positive and energising groups that I'm part of within HFMA. If you are interested in becoming a health and wellbeing champion, please do visit the One NHS Finance website and sign up. I've put some links in the chat already. If you would like to become a member of the steering group that brings those networks together and organises the events like this, please email into the main One NHS Finance email box and we'll come back to you. Our first session this morning is going to be led by Danny Mortimer, Chief Exec of NHS Employers. Danny's going to provide a view on how we can improve support to our staff. So I'll hand over to him. Thank you.
Johanna, thank you so much for the introduction and for the invitation today. And just, I suppose, to start off by acknowledging all the work that you and your colleagues have done through the One NHS Finance programme around wellbeing, as I will touch on the challenges around wellbeing, the desire to support the health and wellbeing of staff working in the NHS. Obviously, there is a lot of focus on colleagues who work in frontline clinical roles. There will be in the work that all of you do. But actually, my experience of working in the NHS is that we do our very best to be one team. There may be some members of the team that are a bit more visible to the public, especially, but actually we do need to look at the whole team because we all depend on each other. So thank you so much, and well done for all the work that you and your colleagues have done. And I know bits of that are reflected on the agenda through the day. And for those of you who don't know who NHS Employers are, we're the Employers Association for the NHS in England. We've been around now for the best part of 20 years. We do three things in particular. We're a membership organisation. Your HR director colleagues are in effect represent you as members. Every statutory organisation in England is a member, and the Department of Health and Social Care pay the membership fee. And in return, we lead work on behalf of the NHS and the department. Particularly, we have particular responsibility for the collective relationship with trade unions. It's not going so well at the moment, obviously, but we have responsibilities there. We represent the NHS to government, largest employer in the country. And that's obviously both about NHS England and the department, but also other government departments. The Home Office have been really important in recent years because of migration. Department for Education are really important. BAYs are really important. We do lots of work with those departments on behalf of the NHS. And we're also used as a mechanism to provide support to employers. And in the health and wellbeing space in particular, we run a large national network, several hundred members now of the health and wellbeing leads in your organisations and systems, and bring them together for them to provide mutual support and also so they can steal each other's ideas with kind of pride and ease. So that's who we are, and my background in particular is in HR. I was a HR strategy director in the NHS most recently, albeit quite a long time ago now, in Nottingham. I suppose it's before coming on and talking about some of the things that we see organisations doing and some of the particular areas of focus for organisations at the moment, I wanted to acknowledge the context that we all find ourselves in, and a context which does impact on the well-being of people in your teams and in your wider organisations and systems. It's an especially challenging time in terms of the economic situation, particularly the economics facing every household, and particularly for some of the lower paid members of your teams. You know, there is a vulnerability that lots of families and households are facing, and obviously that issue around finances and government investment in pay is at the centre of the dispute between many of our major trade unions and the government. At the moment, that dispute is not unique to England. It's playing out across the four nations of the United Kingdom, but you know, that is an important context, and I'll come on and talk about some of the work we see members doing with regard to that. The second is that actually the work itself is challenging. I've worked in the health service now for 33 years, and I've always resisted, up until very recently when when people have said, oh, it's, it's the worst it's ever been, because actually I can remember, because I am very old, I can remember, periods in the 90s when I first worked in the health service, when actually there were astonishing, eye-watering waiting times. There was really poor experience for patients. We hadn't engaged with the kind of issues around quality and safety in the way in which we've done for the last 20 years. But actually this winter, when I talk to colleagues, when I see the experiences that you're having in your organisations and systems, I struggle to remember a time as challenging for this. And you'll be hearing about this in your staff survey results. We heard this last year in most organisations. You'll be hearing about it again when you get the results in the coming weeks. You will know that lots of people in your teams, particularly your clinical colleagues, a number are becoming really worried that actually they're not able to do the job that they want to do. They're not able to always do their very best for their patients. People of my vintage never thought we'd return to the kind of lines of trolleys in corridors that I can remember when I worked in Brighton back in the late 90s, when the corridor was an adjunct to the A&E department, and we're seeing that again. And those things they take a toll. They take a toll on those of us who work in corporate functions. They absolutely take a toll on our colleagues who work in clinical functions. And I think we have, during the pandemic, particularly understood this concept of moral harm, this sense that actually there's a disconnect between people's values and what they find themselves doing. It's a concept that was introduced and understood in the military, based on the things that our colleagues in the armed forces have to do. But I think we understood during the pandemic that many of our colleagues experienced that same sensation as well. Now, clearly, in terms of those issues, there are things that we say on your behalf that the government need to address. We haven't had a meaningful workforce plan in the NHS in England for 15 years. We're due one in the spring, which is fantastic, but we then need to see the investment that follows in that. There is a long outstanding business in terms of capital infrastructure in the NHS. There is a really pressing need to invest in social care, and there's a need to invest long term in preventative measures in public health and health improvement for the population. All those things the government plays a large role in, and there are actions that employers can take, both to address some of those issues themselves, but also to deal with some of the consequences of some of those kind of wider social and service pressures that we're facing in our organisations. I promised the organisers that I wouldn't. There's no PowerPoint. It's a PowerPoint-free zone. You have enough PowerPoint in your lives, but I want to share one thing very quickly, if the technology cooperates, which is we use an 8-element kind of planning tool to work with organisations, and I'll scroll through it, don't worry, to work with organisations to advise them on how to bring together their health and wellbeing plans, their wider strategies around staff experience. We talk to people in particular about the importance of consciously planning what it is they're doing in the health and wellbeing space, as you've been doing through the One NHS Finance programme. That actually there is something about using the data and understanding what is needed. There is something about placing those things in the context of actually culture and leadership and management. There is a risk with health and wellbeing activity, let's be candid with each other, that it becomes a kind of an event. It becomes a kind of a thing you do, a class you run. But there's something about the context. If people go on something that makes them feel valued and better, but actually when they return into the organisation as a whole, there's a disconnect between the culture and what they've talked about, then that's an issue. I think if you look at the kind of plaudit system that you've got a chance to hear about later from Papworth, that's rooted in the culture of that organisation. It feels like having visited Papworth, it feels like a very natural part of how that organisation works, how teams are encouraged to kind of celebrate and work with each other. The tool's available on our website, but I'll also get it sent through to the organisers so that it's available for all of you. There is something about engaging. This is the 5th point, actually engaging with staff and key stakeholders. There's something about understanding what it is people need and responding to that honestly. And sometimes that does mean also honestly acknowledging the circumstances in which people find themselves and offering them some reassurance and about that. There are things that are about prevention. There are a number of things that I flagged that are in the control of the government, but actually there are things also that are in the control of your systems and your organisations. And we're not entirely powerless in terms of some of the things that are happening. And I know, again, there'll be examples right across your organisations that make a difference in terms of the demands that are being placed on people. There is something about targeting approaches, and there's absolutely something really crucial about evaluation, about understanding what works, about understanding what difference activities make. The staff survey that you're about to receive in your organisations is one of the key tools. It's one of the key data sources. It's one of the key ways in which you can engage with your teams. I think most organisations now can give you a breakdown by team and department if there are sufficient numbers. And actually, it's a great way of getting into a conversation with people and saying, look, you're reporting you get pretty good support from your managers. How could we make it better? Why is there a difference between different departments? I know the last job I had, that ability to contrast, because it was a multi-site trust, to contrast some of the experiences between different teams and departments, to understand why there were some of those differences, and to learn some of the things that worked and adopt them elsewhere in the organisation was really important. So let me put that very clearly on your radar for the coming weeks. I think there's also a couple of things I want to say about evaluation. We did some work, which again is available on our website, with RAND, looking at some of the interventions across the NHS and the difference that they make. We're doing some work that's being piloted in the Northwest, which is looking at particular, again with RAND, which is looking at actually the issues around presenteeism. A lot of the work that we do in the health and wellbeing space can be triggered by absence. It's triggered by sickness, absence. Again, I think, to state the obvious, actually people are coming to work, but are not necessarily at their best because of issues at work or issues outside of work. And so there's something about understanding that and getting beneath that. And again, we plan to share that work that we're doing in the Northwest with RAND, with colleagues across the service. And again, our website kind of flags those things. And we have a bulletin that we produce, the workforce bulletin, that isn't just restricted to HR colleagues. Anyone can sign up to be part of that bulletin, and that's a key way in which we share our products. We also have a social media content specifically about health and wellbeing, and we have a staff experience health and wellbeing Twitter feed, which again, you don't need to be registered with the CIPD, a member of the CIPD, to sign up to. Anyone who's got an interest in these issues, all of you have an interest in these issues, please do sign up to those things, and it's a way of sharing good practice across organisations. There's two things then I want to focus on in a little bit more detail, if I may. The first are the set of issues around cost of living, and the second is a set of issues around some of the fundamentals in terms of work. We have done a lot of work with your HR colleagues over this last 12 months in relation to the cost of living pressures that are facing your teams, finance teams more broadly across your organisations and systems. We've done some work with the Joseph Rowntree Foundation and our professional body, the CIPD, to kind of identify and share best practice. And I think we've seen it's a sort of mixed emotion, isn't it? It's slightly depressing, but also really positive. Lots of organisations, particularly organisations working in partnership with their charities, actually take steps to intervene, and lots of attention being placed to workplace food kitchens and food banks, but actually there's been a whole set of other interventions that are available, that have been made available within organisations. Probably the most comprehensive package that we've encountered is the package of work that Merseycare have taken forward for their workforce. It covers all of those things that I've touched on, but it also has a really thoughtful approach in terms of people being able to access advice for themselves and their households. It's identified some of the key risk factors that can tip people over into really extreme distress and hardship. The risk factors associated with gambling, for example, in households, and where that can bring particular vulnerabilities for people in the current circumstances. Talking about the cost of living issues and citing the work that Merseycare have done. I think the other thing I would stress, that there's been a real attention paid, and I'm sure you're doing this in your organisations, to welfare-based interventions, subsidised meals, access to subsidised food, school uniform sales, all those kind of things for people. There's been a lot of work that's been done in terms of partnership with people like Citizens Advice Bureaus, Gamblers Anonymous, and others to kind of provide access to people for really good advice. I think one of the things that we're stressing far more in the conversations now with HR practitioners in particular is that there are still some fundamental things about being a good employer. There are a set of things that we've been focused on now for a long time around flexibility, around career development, which are really important. And actually, to state the obvious, if someone is able to plan their working hours so they can share a lift or avoid childcare costs, if they are able to actually access and develop their career and earn more, if there is a fairness to the way in which additional hours are distributed in some teams and departments, and unless it's changed dramatically, sometimes in organisations we have issues with that in terms of the way in which that kind of access to extra hours, extra earnings, premium pay is made available to teams. Those things all make a difference. They make a difference in terms of retention. They make a difference in terms of a feeling of fairness. They make a difference in terms of people's financial well-being. So this year, we're going to have quite a lot of focus on those kind of things. The second thing that I wanted to flag in terms of detail, there's a huge amount of things that organisations are doing. I've touched on some of the things around financial well-being. I've touched, you will touch during the course of today around a whole set of cultural things and activities around mental health in particular. But I think there is a risk that as employers, you underestimate the value of just some really basic things. And these are true in any department, but particularly in our clinical areas. And I guess there are three things to flag there. The first is breaks. People are meant to have breaks, particularly in this kind of environment where those of us in kind of corporate functions spend most of our days, unless our neighbours are reversing into walls, staring at screens. There is just something about making sure people get that fundamental right. There is a risk, I think, particularly in my time in the health service, that in clinical areas we kind of we allowed people to kind of perversely celebrate the people who stayed late, the people who didn't take their breaks. It becomes a kind of reflex. I worked without a break. I haven't even had a cup of tea. I didn't have my lunch. All those kind of things. Actually, there is something for all of us as leaders to say, we shouldn't allow that to happen. We shouldn't allow that to happen for a payroll clerk. We shouldn't allow that to happen for a staff nurse. So there's something about that. There is a second issue, which is about rest, about providing facilities and spaces for rest. And again, it doesn't matter where you are, and particularly if you're in the kind of in the organisation, in the buildings, in the facilities, there's something about providing those facilities to people where we can. Appreciate it doesn't fit every working environment. It doesn't fit necessarily as easily for colleagues who work in a kind of peripatetic way in the community. But we do know that's really important. Again, lots of you will have been doing work with your charities during the pandemic to kind of invest in those kind of facilities, and we're seeing more and more of those facilities being created. And the third thing, and this is a particular issue in clinical areas, it's something that comes through very strongly through the staff survey, is hydration. The whole business of I've not even had a cup of tea, I've not even had a glass of water. Actually, those things, that's really, it's a really simple but really important thing. The best example we've seen of a kind of that focus on basics is at Sherwood Forest Hospitals. I live in Nottingham, just up the road from me, covers Mansfield and Newark. They've had a really concerted campaign around those things, led by the board, led by the executives, being clear with people that actually it's a problem if they don't have a break. It's a problem if they don't have rest. It's a problem if they don't have access to hydration. And again, that campaign isn't just focused on clinical areas. It's focused on all parts of the organisation, because as I said, there can be that kind of perversity to the cultures that we allow to create, to be created around working hard. You can work hard and have a break. You can work hard and have a glass of water. You can work hard and take all the holiday you're entitled to. You can work hard and have your break in a rest room. You know, all of those things aren't mutually incompatible. So just a couple of things then to sum up. I think there is something about the kind of planning process that you can use, that your organisations can use in terms of looking at this work. And I know it's been dropped into the chat box. Other planning processes are available too, but that is one that we've seen work across organisations. There is something about accessing the kind of networks that Joanna and others lead, and that includes access to the kind of communications and resources that we have as well. And those aren't those aren't just segmented off for people with a HR background. And then there are these two areas, the stuff around financial well-being, which I do believe very strongly needs to focus on some of those fundamentals about being a good employer, as well as the kind of welfare-based interventions. And then this focus on the basics, the fundamentals on rest and breaks, and hydration. There are other examples and case studies that are available on our website. Again, it's an open source kind of access, and we're very happy to follow up with the team. Anything else that you would find useful for the network that you're running and the work that you're doing with finance teams. But I'll stop at that point, Johanna, and I'm happy to take any questions or any reflections about what I've said, but also anything I should have said and I didn't.
Thank you, Danny. That was a really good
apologies
introduction.
again for the interruption.
As long as they're all right.
The bumper on their car, not quite so much, but no, she's okay. Bless her.
I was thinking it's Friday the 13th. What could possibly go wrong? There you go. It's covered us.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we hopefully she's got that out of the way for all of us. Bless her.
Any questions from anybody online? Well, you're thinking of one. I'll just ask one, Danny, about the new ways of working since COVID. So with a particular focus on those corporate services that have tended now to be working pretty much 100% hybrid. Has NHS employers done any research on what might be the best ratio, for example, of office to home based working for specific teams?
So we're doing some work at the moment with the University of Surrey and a program they have called Agilab. So we run our membership engagement is based on a series of regional networks with HR directors in particular, and the networks for the southeast are kind of doing that work with Agilab and looking at some of the lessons around agile working. I think, in fairness, it's emerging. I think it isn't just about the balance between time in the office and time away. It's about what ways can people maintain contact, particularly with their teams. It's about how can people be inducted virtually into roles and all those kind of things. But that some of their early findings again are available on our website, and there'll be more work shared a little bit later on this year. There's some publications that are coming with the university and with the HR Director Network. And again, very happy I'll make a note to make sure that we link the One Finance team into sharing the output from that. And for those of you who work in the southeast, so sort of from the Kent, Surrey, Sussex around London, your HR teams should be plugged into that work already. So there'll be some early emerging kind of findings that we haven't published as yet. So you can plug into those kind of in advance, as it were. Yeah, it's called Agilab. The project's called Agilab.
That's helpful. Thank you. Any hands going up? Sarah?
Good morning.
Hi,
I was just
Sarah.
checking as well that you can hear me. That was very interesting. Thank you very much. I work as a contracts manager at Stockport NHS, and I'm part of the finance and procurement wellbeing team.
Cool.
And I think it was just interesting to hear all your thoughts on that. But one thing that we are implementing that we did last year, and I think I'm really interested to explore this, is that we're encouraging staff to incorporate, just I'd say, like, when I say basic, I don't mean it in that term, but in terms of like self-care, starting from things like exercise, outdoors, taking on extra maybe activities and interests. So we incorporated a few initiatives, competitive initiatives between the departments last year. So these were things like step challenges, to also celebrate staff who have got different interests and hobbies, from things like running to people who are good at, baking. So, and we've started, I've seen over the last year that kind of engagement has got the teams starting to work together. We've been in competition as well with other trusts with step challenges. I think for myself, it's something that works for me, because a couple of years ago I bought a pair of trainers and I've not looked back, and I enjoy that health and wellbeing.
Sure.
And I think that would be really useful, is if we could have some more access to leisure activities as well, because I think sometimes just taking that 20 minutes out 3 times a week can help when you have those pressures. And again, I think it's probably a big initiative that I've seen. I've come from an education background, so I've been within the NHS for 4 years, and I think one of the things that has surprised me is there's just not a lot of education for the staff around their own personal care, when it's really kind of like fundamental, in terms of that's what the NHS is there, is looking at things that can potentially prevent. And I think this is something that I do within my work, and it's also what I'm encouraging with, not only with my stakeholders and with suppliers. So yeah, so I won't go on and waffle on, but it's just something that I'm looking at and exploring, and it is working within the teams.
Brilliant, and you can't beat a bit of healthy competition, particularly with the other trusts in Greater Manchester. I hope you're stopping them in the competitions. And that, I mean, there's a couple of things there. I think absolutely that sense of how you empower and equip people to care for themselves, and for that to be part of the package is really important. And I think most organizations have got some work in that space. And again, the organizations that didn't have it before the pandemic, it was a big feature of how people responded to the pandemic. And then the challenge is how you maintain that, of course. And it sounds like you found some fantastic ways to do that. And then I think the second thing is that absolutely physical activity is part of the package that we see. The sort of set of examples that you've got in Stockport are brilliant. I think I would say it's part of a package, and it's also not for everybody. Not everybody feels they want to take part in competitive sport. Not everybody wants to go to a gym. I'm an old man. My knees will no longer put up with the kind of running that I used to do, for example. So I think absolutely it's about making sure that it's available, and it has, we understand, the research tells us that physical activity has real benefits, particularly in terms of people's well-being. I think we know intuitively that it can have real benefits in terms of camaraderie and teamwork. But it's about that package. It's about what are the set of things that we've got available. What's the culture that we're creating, and it's about giving people some choices and options as well. Which again, I'm sure you're doing in Stockport, but that's like a brilliant kind of program of work that you've got going on.
Yeah, thank you. And I think from there we've gone into other ideas. So it's things like sharing interests that are outside physical activity as well. So we're looking at things like, baking competitions.
You mentioned the baking, yeah, which is
understanding what people interests, that celebrating people's interests that are outside work and what they can bring in. So yeah, I'm happy to have further conversations like that. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. That's some really good comments there. Karen.
Hi, good morning. I just wanted to get the name of the project that you're doing about the hybrid. So I'm a transactions manager at Pennine Care. We're all new. It's quite a new team. And at the moment, I'm really struggling with the hybrid because I've got a large team, and my idea is that we all have at least one day in the office a week. However, I'm struggling to get, such a body does this that day, such a body does that day. I'm waiting in for the postman, I'm waiting in for the boiler man. I just seem to not be able to do that. So I'd be really interested to follow the research that you're doing. So I'd just like to know what the name was again, because I'll be following that up.
So it's Agilab, and the university, and I think I said it was Surrey, it's Sussex. Actually, I got my Surreys and my Sussex mixed up. We're doing some work specifically with them in terms of an NHS context, but they're doing work right across different sectors of the economy. I know they've got a Twitter feed. We've had them along to speak at events that we run, national events, as well as the kind of work they're doing in the region. And I think they have some dedicated stuff that they're producing themselves. Again, in lessons they're learning from right across the economy, which would absolutely fit the kind of work that you and your teams are doing, Karen. So yeah, Agilab, and there's some stuff that we'll publish, but there's some stuff they're publishing in their own right.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. I think we'll pull it to a close there, Danny, if that's okay. So thank you so much for coming this morning, for kicking off our conference, and have a great weekend.
Yeah,
and you're welcome to stay if you want to stay.
I will slip away if that's okay. But thank you so much, and I hope the rest of the day goes really well. Thanks, Johanna.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. Okay, so for the next hour, we're going to be hearing from 4 NHS case studies. So they're practical examples of how organisations and teams have been able to promote health and wellbeing opportunities to their staff. Please ask questions at the end of each overview, or we can wrap it up at the end. So if you just put your hands up if you want to ask anything. So we're going to go to the Laudit tool first, then on to volunteering, cold water swimming, and Kingston Hospital. Over to you. Thank you.
Hi, Johanna. Thank you very much for the invite. Can you hear me all right?
Yep,
great.
Lovely.
Okay.
Thanks, Will.
Great, and thanks very much for the invite. Wonderful keynote presentation by Danny, and it's great to know that the NHS is at last looking at its staff as well as its patients, and I think that's really what lies behind Laudit. Now, Laudit was something that we came up with in 2018. It was an initiative that really came out of one single patient. It was a Friday, and we had a patient that came in to us referred by one of the peripheral hospitals into Royal Papworth, who was really critically unwell and needed a special procedure that we didn't usually do out of hours or as an emergency. And it involved no less than about 30-something people, some of whom came in off annual leave to help us. And the patient did really well, pulled through. And on Saturday morning, I was sat at my computer, and I was just about to send an email to everybody that was involved to say, look, this guy's done really well. We're delighted. And as a bit of a heart-sink moment, I received an adverse event form about the patient because he'd required an unplanned transfusion. And my initial response was, oh, that's so disappointing. But actually, it's great that we've got such a great ethos in the NHS of reporting things that are adverse, but we haven't got anything to tell us when we do well. And I was thinking, if I ran Royal Papworth, the only thing that ever would come across my desk would be these, we call them DATEX, adverse event reports, that I need to then spend a few hours looking into and managing. So we thought it would be really good to have something that could actually celebrate the everyday extraordinary things that go on within the NHS. So over that weekend, we came up with a very simple SurveyMonkey form, and I pitched the idea to the board, and I was expecting them actually to think, this is a bit naff. Is this something we really want to do? But it seems to strike a chord with the board because they only ever receive the complaints. They do get things from patients saying how well everybody's done, but they don't often get things between staff saying, this was a great save, this was a great patient episode. And I was thinking, if we got 1 or 2 a week, that would be brilliant. But actually the idea took off. And in the first month, we had about 30 on a staff base of about 1,000. And then it just snowballed. And it snowballed to such an extent that we couldn't actually cope with the manual handling, with the processing of these Laudits, as we called them. So what we did, we went to the EAHSN Academic Health Sciences Network within East Anglia with some Papworth charity money and approached Amazon Web Services. We thought we'd go for the best. They've done a lot of work for the NHS recently. We really wanted to get a partner on board that we could work with to try and come up with some sort of web portal or iPhone app that would manage these audits for us in a much better way. And then over a year during the pandemic, so it was a little bit tricky to do all remotely, we came up with the Laudit app. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. We launched this with a great fanfare in May of this year, after starting the original audit in 2018, having had about 2,000 original audits sent within a trust of about 1,000 staff. And it's a very straightforward thing to do. There were lots of problems with the old system. It was always based on using the computer within the trust, which meant that people couldn't do it on their phones or on their way to work or when they got home in the end of the evening. And the new system allows you now to use your phone or to use any sort of desktop. You don't need to be within the firewall of the trust to do an audit. Very simple sign up, just an NHS email that needs to be affiliated to the trust that you're working for, and then a password. A few things we need to know about you: first name, last name, work email, and then staff group. So what we've got in the back end of the whole program is the ability for your line manager, if you choose for them to be included, to see all the audits that you both submit about your colleagues and those that you receive from your colleagues. So it's an automatic process. There is no better feeling from the feedback that we've got than bumping into your line manager the next day and they say, you received a really great audit yesterday. Well done. That sort of feedback not only helps for things like IPRs where you can collate everything, but also, just keeping up staff morale. And you can download the app on any iPhone, on any Android, any sort of platform you need at all. None of the data is stored within your phone. It's all stored on our servers, which are ultra secure. They're the highest security you can get for any sort of patient identifiable data. And it's quite easy. You set up your own app, and it's, we're all used to using these sort of things, and we've made it very straightforward. You've got various different buttons on your home screen, submitting positive feedback, your history. That's really important because, all of us have line management meetings where we need to prove what we've done during the year. But Papworth have got a really good culture now of using the tool. And one of the things that we've worked out over the years is it's just as important to support your team members and your staff. So actually submitting audits to other people is just as important as receiving them. And that builds this positive culture that we're looking for, that Danny was talking about. You can have a profile with a profile photo if you want to. And if you're lucky enough to manage a team, you then have a section on your app with all of your team members on, so you can see what's going on within the team as well. One of the things that we wanted to make it easy to use was the time it takes you to send an audit. Now, it's very much like sending a WhatsApp or a text. It's very straightforward. Everybody within the trust is on the database. So even if you know the person's first name and not their second, you can look them up and work out who they are. The date of the positive event, where did it happen? And then what we decided to do was to mirror the CQC's 5 pillars of excellence. So improving patient experience, improving effectiveness, responsiveness, patient safety, and supporting other colleagues. So you can tick which ones of those CQC pillars of excellence this sort of audit would represent. We've also got 3 trust values: compassion, excellence, and collaboration. And then we can filter them. So we can look at all the audits that have been sent this month in Royal Papworth and say, these are examples of compassion, and we can send them off to the board and they can have a look through them. And then there's a description. In the descriptive field, it's all free text. And as you can see, if you're into it, you can use these emoticons as well. You can send it anonymously, but most users tend to want to send it as being credited to them. Now, a little chap, Claude Audit. Once you've successfully submitted it, you get a little animation and keep Claude happy. So since our launch in May of last year now it is, we've had 1,850 audits. So that's been quite remarkable and a huge upturn, about 250% upturn since we went to the easiest system to use. What's really interesting about the whole initiative is that oftentimes at times of institutional stress, so we've moved hospital, since the Laudit initiative came online. We had an awful lot of Laudits given at the time of that institutional stress. And then the 2 periods of the peaks of the pandemic, when we at Royal Papworth were particularly hit by the ECMO service being very busy, the number of Laudits went up. Now, that's quite surprising. And psychologically, I think that's a really interesting thing to think about longer term, is why, when we're all under stress, we turn to something like this, even more so than usual. Feedback's been brilliant. And as I say, this is a top-down initiative. Eilish, our CEO, has very kindly, given us a quote to share with you today to say how much he values it as a board member, to be able to look at all the things that we do, and how great that, when the CQC come next, we've got a list of things that we can say, here are 350 Laudits that the staff have used to say we've improved patient effectiveness by working together as a team. So, brief run through. I'd be more than happy to take questions. If anybody wants to find out more, we've got an external website at laudit.org.uk, or feel free to contact us. We're now in the position to roll this out to the rest of the NHS. So if any of the other NHS organisations would like to get in touch, have a bit of a demonstration, we can set it up for your own trust. Do get in touch with us at laudit@nhs.net. But thanks very much for listening, and more than happy to take questions.
Thanks, Will. I think I'm reflecting all of the comments that come through that just say what a brilliant idea. Something that we're all seem to be trying to do in various different ways. But what struck me was the ability then to use that data for good reporting and to evidence all that good stuff that's happening as well. Okay, we've got a couple of questions coming through. So first one, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
You're on mute, Sarah.
That was great, wasn't it? So that's probably another donation to the charity I need to do. I just wanted to say, as someone who works at Royal Papworth, what an amazing tool this is. The feeling you get, when you receive a Laudit is absolutely wonderful, but the feeling to be able to give that Laudit as well.
Thanks, Sarah. So, Will, you said this was able to now be rolled out to other NHS trusts. Is there a cost involved?
Yes, there would be at the moment. Ideally, what we'd love to be able to do is to give this out to non-NHS commercial businesses and then use that revenue that we generate to make it free to the NHS. That's the ultimate business plan that we've got. Look at me, a cardiologist, talking to you guys about business plan. But that's my dream. I'd love to be able to say to you, it's free. NHSEI are our first likely customer. And I think if we can make some sort of inroads at that level and say that this should be a national initiative, then what we're aiming to do is to keep the costs as low as possible. But as I say, what I'd love to be able to do longer term is have the private sector finance the NHS side of things. But at the moment, there is a cost, yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions before we move on to our next example of excellence? Okay, thank you so much, Will. That's amazing. I'll put the website in the chat as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, on to volunteering.
Good
Hi, Jodie.
morning. Hi, Johanna. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak today about our volunteering day, and hopefully you'll find it useful. So just get the slides. Let me just share the slides first of all. Okay. Can you all see that?
Yes,
Excellent.
thanks, Jodie.
That's always a good start. So why did we organise a volunteering day? Like, how did we come up with the idea? We have a health and wellbeing work stream within our ICS, and from that we're always looking for ideas to promote health and wellbeing. So with the health and wellbeing workstream in our ICS, we have representatives from each of the organisations in our ICS. So we meet, I think every 6 weeks, get together with that as well. So always looking for ideas with there. And we also about our wellbeing service, and the lady who spoke there, she talked about the 5 ways to wellbeing, which is here, and it kind of gave us the idea to give and volunteer. Now, I'd just like to say I can't take the credit for organising this. So at NSFT, we've got 2 health and wellbeing champions signed up with the FFF network. So there's myself and Natalie Todd, who's on the conference today as well. Hi, Natalie. So Natalie organised this event. So thank you for that. It was really good. So choosing a place to volunteer. We chose St Elizabeth's Hospice in Ipswich as it's the charity that we support through our Pennies from Heaven. If you're thinking about organising a volunteering day, some of the things that you might like to think about is location. So our finance department has 2 bases. We've got one in Norfolk and one in Suffolk, but HQ is in Norfolk. So most of the social events do take place in Norfolk. So we wanted to change locations, mix things up a bit. Think about if there's somewhere that you can volunteer that's personal to a team member. Maybe you could choose somewhere to volunteer that's close to somebody's heart or their interest. It was purely by coincidence that a family member of one of the teams had resided at the hospice, and it meant a lot to that person to be able to give something back to the charity. Also think about inviting finance departments from your ICS to kind of get that networking together, meet with colleagues from your ICS as well. We've got such a good relationship with all of finance teams across our ICS. Also, maybe you could have a draw or vote for where to volunteer to increase staff engagement as well. So what did we do on the day? We did some gardening. And it was really good, and it was just such a good day. So here's I'm just going to share some photos with you of the day as well. St Elizabeth Hospice provided all the gardening tools. They also provided a free lunch and drinks throughout the day, which was a really nice surprise when Natalie contacted them and said, they said we can provide free lunch and drinks and you don't need to bring the tools. And we were so lucky with the weather as well. So just a few more photos I want to share. And my personal favourite of Brian, I think he's enjoying the gardening too much, but we all did have such a lovely day. And then just going back to the 5 ways to wellbeing, this is something that kind of came out of it after the day. We did actually cover all of these 5 ways to wellbeing, not just the give and volunteer. So by doing the gardening, we were being active. Keep learning. I learned so much that day, particularly what the difference is between a weed and a flower. So I learned a lot. Take notice and live in the present. You could just hearing the birds, smelling the flowers. It was just so nice. We were able to chat together as well. But in those moments when you were just doing some weeding, sweeping leaves, tidying the garden, you could just really take notice and live in the present as well, and connect with others. So we were really looking at giving and volunteering as part of this model, but by choosing what we did, we were able to cover all of those, which was really good. So we're all working from home, and the volunteering day meant that we saw team members that we hadn't seen in person for a long time, especially with the 2 different bases as well. And it was a nice event for new starters. Now, I've said new in apostrophes because they've probably been with us one team member ended up volunteering at the hospice on a monthly basis. So then another team member did a fire walk to raise money for the hospice, which was organised by the hospice charity department, and they raised £500. And that was, I'm going to embarrass Natalie, that was Natalie, and here she is doing her fire walk. So well done, Natalie, for raising the money for the charity as well. And then just if you have any questions, it was such a good day, really good. And it was easy to organise. I can say that because I didn't do it.
Thanks, Jodie. That looks like like you say, such a good day. So nice to get out in the air and tick off all your 5 ways to well-being as well in the one thing is brilliant. Angela, let's go for your question.
Thanks for sharing. I really quite enjoyed that. And I think my question is with our team is that we do work remotely most of the time, but then also it's just the engagement of these ideas. So what was the uptake? And did you have to do any coercing, or was it quite positive?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question because I've made some notes as well. To start with, we didn't have as much take up as I thought we would. I thought a lot more people would be interested. So one of the things I realised when we'd sent out the communications to let people know about the day is I had missed off the vital detail of that you don't need to take annual leave to like come on this day. And I think once I'd clarified that, there was more in uptake then. So kind of if you're sending comms out, then say like that you don't need to take annual leave, it is part of a working day. I think as well we were trying to organise it like a couple of months before the actual event, or 6 weeks. And with some of the events that we've organised, I do find that people, excuse me, they don't like to commit too far ahead because they don't know what their workload is going to be like at the time. So to work closer to the date that we were organising, we sent round another message saying if anybody's still interested in this. And we were lucky. I think, Natalie, is it fair to say like St Elizabeth's Hospice were really good with our flexibility, that we were still adding people even like 2 days before the event. So give people that flexibility if you can to increase engagement. Also, so I think the next time we organise a volunteering day, which we definitely are going to, thanks Natalie, is I think now we've had it that first time and people have talked about it and excited about it and said what a good day it was, that will then increase uptake for the next time.
Thank you so much.
That's okay.
Jodie, can I just ask a really basic question?
Yes.
So your finance team rocks up to do some gardening. Is somebody from the hospice there saying we would like you to do this, 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 and this? So you weren't just let loose. So where you were learning stuff, how were you learning that? Who were you learning that from?
Okay. Natalie, do you want to answer or would you like me to answer?
Hi Jodie, hi Joanna.
Hiya.
Basically, when I got in touch with the hospice, they have their own like volunteering department because they rely on people quite heavily, like to help with the service and the everyday kind of things like the gardening and the painting and things like that, even in the kitchen. So they had a whole team and they were able to kind of get involved from day one, and also on the day they were helping us with where the tools were, what we needed to do, kind of giving us all the instructions, because they're very used to people coming in just to help them for the day as corporate events, or like Jodie says, like on a monthly basis, a daily basis. So they're very well organised. We were lucky.
Thanks, Natalie. That's really helpful. Can I just ask, has anybody else organised a volunteering day through their finance departments?
Something I really wanted to get into, and I did offer to go to the military vets, but the fully staffed at the moment and didn't want anything, so I'm looking for somewhere else.
There's, I was thinking of different ideas. We looked at as well beach clean. So there's, I think there's a national beach clean like in September. Is that right, Natalie? I think it was September. Local councils as well. I think they have volunteering sections in the council as well for different ideas, and also just having a look on the internet as well for like ideas.
Can we go anywhere, or does it? So in my previous role, it had to be like had to have a registered charity number. Is that the case here,
I don't
or
think
can it be
so.
anywhere?
I think
No.
it can be anywhere. I know there might be somebody. I think it was. I want to say it was the N&M, but I might be wrong. I know someone did some charity work at or did some volunteering work at stables, and like where lots of children go as well. And they like repainted all the fences, put the Christmas decorations up, and I don't think they were a registered charity. I could be wrong, but I think it could be like anywhere.
All right, that's good. Yeah.
If
Great.
anyone, if I'm lying, speak now if anybody knows. There's a couple of questions in the chat. Is it okay to answer some of those and then go back to the one was did you get leadership sponsorship, and did some of your leaders take part? We're really lucky at NSFT. We have quite a lot of autonomy with this. So our leaders are really engaged with One NHS Finance. We've recently gained our level 2 accreditation. So we have a lot of autonomy. We can come up with ideas of what we want to do. And our Deputy Director of Finance came with us on the day, which was really nice to see her. Was there much admin involved, safety checks? We did ask if we needed to do DBS checks, but they didn't need DBS, I think because we were working outside as well. So it depends what you're going to be doing. But Natalie, was there much admin involved?
No, not really. It was just emails between myself and the hospice, really. That was it, really, Jodie.
Yeah.
Straightforward.
Thank you. And then someone's got their hands up. I'm trying to. Tamsin, is it?
It might
Tamsin.
be me,
Hi,
yeah.
Tamsin.
Hi. I just wanted to reiterate that I don't think it needs to be a registered charity.
Good.
I took a volunteer day in December because we have in Cornwall a local church that organises Christmas hampers for some of the most poor, or like the poorest families in Cornwall. So throughout November, I was quite late doing it this year. I didn't do it until I did it back in like 2019. Then I went on mat leave. But because we weren't in the office this time, I organised a PayPal so people could donate some money if they wanted to. And then at the end of November, just before the boxes were due to be collected by the charity, I took the day off and went food shopping, got all the boxes wrapped with Christmas paper, things like that. So sometimes it's a bit of thinking outside the box as well that you're allowed to take volunteer days for. So it's always worth just asking if it's, if you're allowed to take the day to do this. It doesn't always have to be, volunteering within a organisation.
Thank you. I've just seen some more questions I missed. I missed one. I think Sarah says, how many of your team were involved? We had about 20% of the team in the end. So it was quite a small team. But like I say, once we've, I think after this one, when we do the next volunteering day, then we'll definitely have a lot more than that. Thanks for all the nice comments as well. I'm just scrolling through to see if there's any more. And there's different ideas coming through. Brilliant.
Thanks, Jodie. Like you said, there's loads of really good ideas coming through in the chat. I wonder if, as the next health and wellbeing steering group, that we just collect those together and we can disseminate them out maybe as an idea pack for that. But that's been really good. Thank you so much for your presentation. We're going to move next on to cold water swimming. Anna.
I'll just share my slide. Can everybody see those? Is that okay?
Yep.
Fab. Hello, my name is Anna. I'm the head of occupational health and wellbeing at Royal Cornwall Hospital in Cornwall. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about cold water swimming today. And I hope that doesn't make you shiver, just the idea of it. So like many trusts, we're hugely busy, we've got high vacancies, and equally like many trusts in the UK, we've got really high sickness absence that is attributable to stress and anxiety in particular. So well over a third of our absence is due to stress, anxiety and depression. So part of my role is to help find ways to help our staff deal with the effects of that and try and improve attendance in the organisation. And what I've noticed is working in NHS, so I came into this role in 2020, literally just before the pandemic started. And prior to that, I worked in HR, and I would say that prior to the pandemic and time before, I think the focus for wellbeing activity, even if we called it wellbeing activity, which I'm not sure that we did, but it was largely on sickness absence. So it's all about how much is it costing, what's our duty of care, and just trying to keep people in work for longer, but not really with a much of a strategic view, in all honesty. And then, of course, we went into 2020 and the pandemic, and there was this whole kind of like, oh, no, we need to take care of NHS staff and let's sort of chuck everything at it. And we got loads of donations of food and drinks and apps and all kinds of stuff. And there was an abundance of it, there is no doubt. But since then, we've kind of, the evolution of wellbeing at work, I think, is moving forward in a really great way. And what we try to do at Royal Cornwall Hospital is look at what does wellbeing mean in the longer term. It's not just throwing cake at something or a free coffee voucher, as some people like to do, but it is actually about helping people to make meaningful lifestyle changes so that they're not just better today, but they can potentially be better for life. And with that as well, of course, what we encourage our staff to do or inspire people to do may also have an impact on their families, which helps to really improve things. So what we did, I'm really keen on the idea of social prescribing out there in kind of general healthcare. So we decided to adopt a similar model for our staff. So the key principles of our offer are that anything we offer needs to be accessible to everybody. It should be low cost so that we can carry on doing it. Keep away from fads. Not really interested in anything that's a bit faddy or a bit fashionable, but really to utilise green and blue therapeutic benefits as well. So getting people out to nature, it's got huge wellbeing benefits on its own. So anything that can wrap that into it is a good thing. Equally, things that activities that create social groups are a big plus, and anything that offers peer support. We know that we cannot offer all of the one-to-one support for staff for mental health issues, but we know that friendship groups that we can help cultivate through work can offer really powerful peer support. Have a huge amount of access to open water all year round, and in addition to rivers and lakes as well. But the sea is a really obvious benefit that we have living here. So what we did is we partnered with a company called Chill UK. So they did all of the training and provided the instructors and the insurance and all of that kind of stuff. And the first course that we ran a couple of years ago, we also partnered up with Portsmouth University, who were doing the first study of its kind to find out, does it really help somebody's well-being if they get into the sea? So there's loads of anecdotal evidence around cold water and happiness and reducing stress, anxiety and depression. But there was, until recently, a bit of lack of scientific evidence, hard evidence to back it up. And what was really great is our groups took part in this study, and at the end of the study, we found out that sea swimming did, in fact, increase well-being, and it did so for, there was an 18% increase for all participants 6 months after the course had finished. So it wasn't just a on-the-day effect, it actually changed the way you viewed your life longer term. And interestingly as well, there was a 25% reduction in the risk of burnout. So really, really good, powerful stuff. And by the way, these pictures are of all of our staff, and with their permission, we're using them today. And just love all the happy, smiley faces by the sea. There is no doubt that getting into the sea, it really does. It's really great for courage building and confidence building. When I set up this course, I was really, really nervous of cold water, I'm not going to lie, but I love the idea of it for people who wanted to give it a try. So I set it up with the chap from Chill, and then he was like, well, you're coming as well, aren't you? And I was like, oh, no, I'm fine, thanks. I'll just let everybody else go in. And but thankfully, and I'm really, really grateful, he made me come along because he felt that I couldn't really promote something unless I knew what it did. And I have been swimming every week since, throughout all winters. So it's really had an impact on my life. And it does build a huge sense of courage, knowing that you've kind of, even if you feel really, really nervous about going into cold water and then you overcome that, it's great. It makes you feel really brave. It's great for managing stress, and it really does give you a genuine sense of joy and happiness. What we noticed here was it increased cross-organisational social networks. So we had groups of people going swimming from all kinds of areas of the hospital who never normally work or socialise. And then they formed their own informal groups after their courses, and they all still swim today, even a couple of years on for some of them. And of course, we get to benefit from the additional therapeutic benefits of spending time in blue spaces. And there's loads and loads of evidence on that it just improves longevity and general health. And like I said, until very recently, there wasn't a huge amount of scientific research to back up what people instinctively know. But thankfully, there's been a load more produced only just very recently, and it's shown over huge studies longer term that it improves people's immunities, it reduces pain, improves insulin resistance, sensitivity, so helps with weight loss, improves your circulation, and your metabolic health improves as well. And the great thing about getting in the cold water, it releases noradrenaline, which increases your focus and drive. And it also releases a load of dopamine, but you don't get any crash the same way you would in other stimulants. And it can last for up to 4 hours afterwards. Like I said before, it definitely improves your feelings of confidence and bravery. And it builds a resilience in you that transfers to all other areas of life. So we organise this with Chill UK, who's a company who've got trained lifeguards and swim coaches throughout the UK, and they will partner with you to run a session of sea swimming courses, and every person took part in 8 sessions. And the cost there, because of course you're finance people, so you'll want to know, it was £100 per person for an 8-week course, and you get a free swim hat, which is very good value. So when we started doing this, it did create a bit of interest, and we have been, one afternoon we had the local BBC News crew came down to film us, and then we appeared on BBC Breakfast News the following morning as well, which was something of a surprise whilst you're eating your porridge. So that's our lovely team. Hopefully I might have inspired a few of you to try, if you're not already, because it is hugely popular now. If you are interested in doing it yourself, just a couple of tips for you. There's 2 really great books there. The one on the left is one that's only just been released, and that's smack full of evidence about why it's so great for you. And interestingly, what Susanna Soberg found was that there's huge benefits for you physiologically at just 12 minutes of exposure per week, and that can be done over several sessions. And that's when you're temperature adjusted. And when you start out, you need actually much less than 11 minutes to get all the benefits, which is amazing, because actually you don't have to be too extreme. It doesn't have to be staying in the water for hours. Just 11 minutes a week will do you a lot of good. And if you don't live near water, a cold shower blast at the end of a hot shower is really, really great for you, and you can build up from 5 seconds to however long you can tolerate it, but ideally for a minute. It's a really good social thing to do. Go with a friend, join a club. There's loads of swim clubs now, and it's obviously safer, and the social connection brings added wellbeing benefits to you and longevity benefits. And I have written there, it doesn't need to be icy, because any temperature change that makes your body respond is good. So, you know, put a plunge pool in your garden, get in a river, get in a lake, get in the sea. But do get a swimming hat if you're swimming out in the sea, because you need to be visible. And it also prevents extra heat loss to keep you safe. And if you've got sensitive ears like I do, really important that you plug them or wear a hat, just to make sure you don't get surfer's ear, which is not very pleasant. So there's some nice, hopefully some little practical benefits there. There's also, I should have added on there that Surfers Against Sewage, they do a really great app, which is the Cleaner Seas and River Service. An app on your phone just to check there's been no sewage expelled in your area, because obviously there's a lot of sewage, unfortunately, is a bit of a problem, but that app just shows you where it's safe to swim in your local area. So very, very useful, and it's free. What else can I tell you? If you're interested in mindfulness as well, the getting into cold water is really great for mindfulness, because of course you focus on your breath and surviving rather than all the other stuff that's going on in your life. So it's really good for that as well. And finally, I guess, environmentally, the sea does need us all to take care of it. And when people get involved in swimming in the open water, they also start protecting what they love. So it has extra environmental benefits as well, which I think is great. So that's what we've been doing. I hope that's been of interest. If anybody wants any more information or just wants to chat about it, that's my email address at the bottom, because I love talking about open water swimming. I'm happy to offer any advice. So I will stop sharing that now if there's any questions.
Thanks, Anna. That was brilliant. I'm an absolute advocate for that. I just wanted to pick up on your bit about the joy that people get from having survived that cold water plunge. So I live miles away from the sea, but my local Lido is unheated, and you can swim there through the winter. And I've seen a couple of sessions with people doing their first cold water dips.
Oh, wow.
And honestly, when they come out, the joy on their faces and the things that they are saying is just amazing. That it's almost like a revelation. I've survived that, and that resilience bit about I'm so brave. I got into water that was cold and I managed it. So yeah, just to add to the benefits of it. Any questions from anybody else? I'm just checking the chat in case there's any questions that have gone through there. Don't think so. Okay, brilliant. Thanks then, Anna.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
And the last one that we've got before our first break is health and wellbeing at Kingston Hospital. So over to Yarlini.
Yeah. So the first thing that we did, and we launched in June 2022. So if you just click on a couple of thank you. Was we create our own wellbeing website, and what we recognised was, of course, that not everybody has access to a computer during their day. So we also made sure that staff had laptops and mobile devices so that they could access the website. And the things on the website are underpinned by the NHS Wellbeing Framework. So looking at the 7 pillars to look at both physical, emotional, social and spiritual, environmental issues, as well as financial areas as well. And what's really positive is we're getting hits on the website, so we're averaging 60 views a day, and what we are doing is we're keeping it fresh. We're putting new items on, and what we're looking at is you can go through here and you can log on to physical classes, which I'll come on to in a minute. So if we move on to the next slide, we've also launched a wellbeing toolkit. That was to provide an easy guide for staff to find the right support. It's all color coded and you've got icons to use. For Luddites like me, they're printed copies that are available, but we've also gone super techie, and you can have QR codes as well, so you can allow access from all sorts. And these are promoted by our comms team, but also by our health and wellbeing ambassadors. So I'll just go on to the next slide and talk about a bit about our ambassadors. So we've got our ambassadors across all the organisation, both Kingston and HRCH for health and wellbeing. They've all undertaken proper NHS England training. They meet quarterly, they share best practice and within their departments, and also other issues relating to wellbeing. We have a good system of information dissemination via posters, leaflets and postcards. And obviously the ambassadors share that information, but also support and make sure they disseminate that down into their teams. So sharing that information and making sure that that support is there and people recognise it is really vital. And that's one of the really, really positive things that they do. If I go on to the next slide, we've got a nightclub. Now, that is not what you think about it. There's no sort of flashing lights, disco balls or anything like that. But what this is to be cognizant of the fact that obviously we've got a 24/7 workforce, and how do we start accessing our staff who work shifts and actually are not sort of aware or included in terms of some of those activities that happen during daylight hours. So we ran this in conjunction with ISS, who are our soft FM providers. And we focused on what we thought would be helpful for them. So looking at making sure we can ensure promoting sleep education and sleep hygiene, how you can actually ensure that you've got that nutrition information as well to make sure that staff are eating well. And when people are doing shifts, what advice could we give? People thinking actually somebody's taking time out to think about me and the way that I work, and that importance in terms of sleep education and sleep hygiene, not just for your physical well-being, but for your mental well-being as well. So if we move on, I'm just going to talk about some of the things that we do in terms of some physical classes. Now, we all know that, you know, what do they say? The next biggest killer is sitting down and actually not doing anything. So actually what we're trying to do here is promote easy ways of accessing physical exercises. So we've got classes that are delivered by our health and wellbeing physios, but we also link in with local community trainers. And actually, and I think it was the previous speaker, Anna, was talking about the connections that we had in terms of our local community through COVID. We've maintained some of those. So we've had, you know, websites created and apps created that individuals can also join in on. We also, I don't know if you know where Kingston and Richmond are, but we're very close to Richmond Park. And what we've tried to do is say, why don't we have lunchtime walks and talks? I mean, it's obviously more enticing during the summer months, but actually they're some of the things that we're trying to promote. I certainly do one-to-ones with my deputies outside. It's quite nice to grab a takeaway coffee and then walk into the park, and then you're not disturbed by others. But also I find that the conversation is so much clearer, and you have that sort of ability to just free up and have that mental space that you probably. The thing that we've tried to do is make sure that the classes are online at different times in the day, so early morning and evening, to try and get a maximum access. We also have a physio gym, and there is available slots that people can use and book in on that. So again, trying to use what we have already. If we go on to the next slide, just touching on mental health training. Again, you know, some of the things that we've been facing currently, and actually the stress of life is causing a hell of a lot of strain on our mental health. And I think we're not very good at maybe recognizing that as managers. So what we're trying to do is provide a training for all staff and managers to access the mental health first aider knowledge base. So it's not onerous. There's sort of short bite-sized videos for managers to access, and it's there when you need it. And I think, you know, what we're trying to do here is provide the support when you need it, and also have the appropriate signposts that it's not onerous in terms of trying to get that online training. In addition to that, we're also trying to promote lots of lunch and learns. We talked about resilience and burnout, and some of that cold water swimming, I think, is phenomenal. I actually did some on New Year's Day in Falmouth, Anna. I'm not sure I stayed in for 12 minutes, though. It was a bit too cold for me. But those sorts of areas that we're looking at are vital to ensure that we support staff. And we talked about sleep habits, and I'll talk. We've also got a clinical psychologist that we've got access to. We brought this in literally about 6 months into COVID, and we held these one-to-one sessions for staff who you could either get referred by Occy Health or you could choose to self-refer. And the feedback that we've had from this has been astounding. People really value the fact that they can have that one-to-one session, and there can be a number of sessions if needed. We've also got a long COVID group. I'm sure that's consistent with others, but that group psychological interventions also are run, because I think that ability to share with your colleagues how you're feeling and the debriefs during the pandemic also resonated with so many people that we've kept that going. In terms of other elements that we've also got access to a senior staff counsellor. So that happened from about September last year, and that came predominantly because that was the feedback we were getting from our staff surveys. This counsellor can provide up to 6 sessions with you. It doesn't have to be work related, it can be personal issues. It's about making you feel that you're your best self, so you can talk about anything that you want to. Again, you can self-refer, or you can be referred by Occy Health, and actually onward you can also have, once you've had these sessions, it might mean that you need something else. It might mean that you want to see a physio, it might need that you want to see the psychologist, but so that opportunity is there as well. So moving on, right, now the menopause. Now most of our, half our population of course are women, and I can tell you I am in this bracket of the menopause. I think we need to shout about it. I think what we are trying to do at Kingston is recognise that actually it shouldn't be something that is buried anymore. I think actually we're seeing a lot more conversation and talking about it, but we launched a menopause support group in January 2022. We've got a load of guest speakers that we get on a monthly basis, and actually we've also had a specific session for our male staff, because I think there's that's sort of twofold. That's recognition of what female colleagues and partners potentially are going through, but also referencing the male menopause too. And then what we did in December is we had a specialist menopause nurse join our health and wellbeing team, and now we've got a dedicated clinic to support that. So I think the other thing that we've tried to do is make sure that there's recognition that this isn't somebody having an off day or somebody being odd. We've got a policy that's designed, and that's come from the it had the input from the menopause support group. And I think that sort of making it available, making it part of who we are, and that recognition has been really, really fantastic. So not to forget the other half of our colleagues are relating to men's health. We started a clinic in October last year for men's health specifically. We know that men are notoriously bad at saying that they've got issues, so again we are trying to promote that actually, do you know what, it's okay not to be okay. So it's run by our Occy Health nurse, but we talk about lots of different things. We've got interventions so we can take blood pressure, weight, cholesterol, and we're trying to do this year in promotion to do more sort of testicular and prostate checks to make sure that we've got that early diagnosis. So again, we're trying to get the men's support group going. I can maybe come back and tell you how successful that is, but that's something that we're trying to launch this year. Okay, so in terms of other things that we've done, we've had a couple of away days that we've had for each directorate and teams. We've done half-day sessions that, there is a bit about, the exec debrief, but actually the focus is on team building and fun, which is nice to have that sort of interaction with your colleagues. We've had African drumming. I'm not sure how much fun that was, but certainly, I wasn't very good at it. But all of these sessions were facilitated by our learning and development team to evaluate the effectiveness of it. So we had how we do future days. So the next tranche is available, and we're looking again for people who didn't have the opportunity the first time, but actually also to have that sort of alignment with teams and have that time away from the hospital and community. Other things that we're looking at is a wellbeing fair. So that's a whole day event. It's obviously not just Kingston and Hounslow and Richmond. We're looking at incorporating other stakeholders and local businesses. We're looking at the physical and mental health elements. So, you know, massage to meditation. And we're also looking at, you know, trying to get local people, local businesses involved in that. We're also looking at night staff, making it accessible in the evening so that night staff have an opportunity to access it too. So last couple of slides, financial support, recognising that things are tough, but also recognising that, you know, a lot of our staff are in the 50+ bracket. So access to independent financial advice, looking at planning for retirement courses, pension awareness campaigns, looking at other areas where, you know, we can help staff in terms of salary sacrifice benefits, and looking at making sure that we signpost financial support for carers and have access and links into that, and all of that's on our website. The last thing I'm going to cover today is our cost of living support. So we know that things are exceptionally tough, and we are trying to support our staff as much as possible. So we funded the Blue Light Card for all, and we're trying to promote that in terms of all the discounts that you can get. And actually you can get quite a few. We also have frozen the nursery fees for our staff for this year. In the community, obviously our nurses and staff travel into people's homes. So we're trying to ensure that we maintain the ULEZ charge and reimburse them for that, and also support any of when petrol was high, we also gave them a contribution in terms of ensuring that over and above the amount that they got. We are also looking at having a dedicated web page, and that is to have everything together. So you can click on there and you can look at citizens advice support, you could look at local advice lines, and that's on our website too. One of the things that I think is really good that we've done is we've got a staff marketplace, and that's on Facebook. So we've got that ability to do that mutual swap of goods between staff. So if people have got, you know, children in the same school, looking at swapping staff uniforms and things like that, and you know, and toys and elements there. We have it all IPC checked, so don't worry about that. There was issues on certain elements, but that's working really well. The other things that we were doing is we've installed more decent showers, actually, because I think some of them are really rubbish, and shower facilities on site. So people, if they want, can cycle or run into work and have a decent shower. And we've also provided toiletries within that. And again, that might help because you're not now getting in your car and spending petrol. And it also helps your health and well-being in terms of cycling or running into work. And the other thing that we've done is we've got financial counselling, and we use a financial management company, and that's free of charge for individuals to do, if you like, a money checklist for themselves. So quite a lot there that we're doing, and I think the main thing that we're trying to do is make sure that we listen. So listen to what staff want, and if we can help, we will. So that's it. I'm happy to take any questions.
Wow, Yarlini, thank you so much. I'm blown away by the amount of information that you've just shared. Really, some really good stuff on there. I'm keen to just ask on behalf of everyone, in terms of stealing with pride, is there anything that's more generic that you've already set up that you would be happy to share with other NHS trusts? So I took note of the videos that you were saying, the bite-sized videos on health and wellbeing and signposting, but I wasn't sure if that was specific to your trust, and potentially the menopause packs as well.
So what I can do, Johanna, is I can go back, because this is because obviously I've made it sound like I've done it all. Of course, I've done nothing of the sort. We've got a phenomenal team within our HR and health and wellbeing that do that. I can't see why we can't, but I can go back and take that back and see what we can share. Absolutely.
Fabulous, thank you. There has been lots of chat saying how great this all is. Lots of support for the inclusion of men's health sessions and the men's menopause. There's a question from Karen. I don't know if you want to talk a bit more to it. Where do you get the info for the sessions? Would really like to start this. That might be around menopause.
So actually, I mean, most of it actually comes because we're linking in with some of our own gynae consultants. Actually, we have a great gynae consultant, Mina, who is really passionate about it. But also we're getting, and I think through her links, actually, we're getting those guest speakers. But again, is it? I'm not very good at reading the chat and answering the questions. But if it is. If it's Karen, I can try and get that to you and see where they've accessed it. But I think it's actually Meena Shankar and her network and getting individuals in. But yeah,
that's great. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Cathy Costello, Head of Financial Reporting for NHS England. I wanted to be a health and wellbeing champion because there was a great emphasis placed on health and wellbeing of our staff in the early stages of the pandemic, and I wanted to make sure that we continue to do so as we go forward. People have changed the way they live their lives, they've changed the way they work, and they will continue to do so. It's an opportunity to make sure that we signpost everything that's available for everybody in case they don't have time to explore the resources themselves. We can also have the opportunity to discuss what works well with them and to share experiences so others can benefit. And if we can support our staff to help them look after their health and well-being, we will improve our way of working and our staff will be happier. Thank you.
I signed up to be a health and wellbeing champion because I want to lead by example. I want to demonstrate the fundamental importance of achieving a balance between your physical, mental and social well-being, and in being available as support to those who need help with it. I enjoy the role and seeing my other health and wellbeing champions to share and generate ideas about how to encourage a health and wellbeing approach for all staff.
As the FSD lead for Liverpool University Hospitals, I became a health and wellbeing champion because it was really important to me that we not only balanced tasks with our team, but we balanced the environment that we provide for our staff to conduct them tasks. And health, wellbeing and health, especially mental health, was really important to do.
Hi all, I'm Nish. I've become a health and wellbeing champion because I have a real passion to share a variety of mental health and physical healthcare tips to generally help with all of our, moods and make us feel really good about what we're doing. And the role itself actually gives us the opportunity to learn from other health and wellbeing colleagues from Trust. And that way we can share best practice. And as we know, self-care is really important. So if we look after ourselves, we generally can look after others.
Hello, I'm Karen White, a Health and Wellbeing Ambassador for the University Hospitals of Leicester NHS Trust. And about a year ago, I reached out for some volunteers to work with me to help support colleagues in the wider directorate. I'll let them introduce themselves.
I'm Graham Holmes, Head of Finance for Transformation.
I'm Jenny Jones, Deputy Costing Lead.
I'm Vicky Turner, Head of Contracts and Commissioning.
And I'm Donna Briggs, Interim Associate Director of Finance.
And I'm actually from a procurement background, so it's quite a diverse group. And I just need to mention that one of our colleagues Eleanor is actually on annual leave today, so couldn't be part of this recording, but she also has a finance role. Over the past 12 months, our team have formed a monthly virtual mental health and wellbeing cafe, whereby we invite all 200 colleagues from our directorates to join a session on a particular topic. It's a drop-in, drop-out. It's not mandatory. You can come along and you can join in to whatever topics that you feel that you want to get yourself involved in. It's something that we feel very passionate about. The topics that we've covered to date include promotion of mental health and wellbeing, values, exercise to improve wellbeing, making time to reflect, and the importance of sleep. We've also developed a newsletter to share useful links that come from the cafe with the whole team. At a recent Directorate Away Day, our team have been recognised for the mental health and wellbeing work undertaken, and actually won the annual Chief Financial Officer and CEO Award for our achievements, which is brilliant. This subject matter is very important and close to everybody's hearts on our team. We're very passionate about it. We want to help and support each other. So we are delighted that this has been recognised by our organisation as we continue to develop our mental health and wellbeing service. Obviously, we're also really, really happy to be part of this event today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was nice, wasn't it? My God, I feel like I'm just going to come in now and just bring everyone back down. So I'm going to undo everything that you've just done, Vida. Sorry. Hopefully not. Thank you so much for having me. I am just joining halfway through Vida's session there. So I hope that this morning has been good. What's this say? Could the speaker... Hang on, what's this say? Oh no, that's not for me. Not for me. Stay out of it. Nothing to do with me. There we go. Yeah, no, I hope that the day has gone well. I'm really happy to be able to speak to everybody. So just to kind of introduce myself and who I am. My name is Jake Mills and I am the founder and chief executive of a national mental health charity called Chasing Stigma. Although I am a founder and a chief executive of a national mental health charity, I am in no way consider myself an expert in mental health. I've not gone to university to study mental health. I'm not a mental health practitioner. My background is actually in stand-up comedy. If you sat there thinking I've never heard of him, that's how good I was. But I'm kind of on telly at the moment now, in a way. But how do you go from being a stand-up comedian to running a mental health charity? Maybe it says a lot about my act, but actually the reality is that through lived experience. So I, in all honesty, had no idea what mental health meant. I didn't really know anything about good mental health. I didn't know anything about bad mental health. I didn't know anything about signs and symptoms of poor mental health. I didn't know how to cope with my mental health, look after my mental health. And importantly, I didn't know how to access help and support if I or anybody I knew ever needed help with their mental health. So it was never part of any conversations that I ever had. I went to an all-boys school in Liverpool. It was certainly never a conversation that we had in school. It was not a conversation I had with friends, with family, or anything like that. So about 10, 11 years ago, when I started to struggle with my mental health, I had no idea. I had no idea that I was. I didn't know that the way that I was feeling was a thing. I think the easiest way to describe how I felt, and it was gradually getting worse, was quite numb and disconnected from life in general. You know, I felt like I had nothing, no urge or desire or need to get up, to be around, to do anything. I felt completely disconnected from the things that I would usually enjoy, from the people that I'd usually be around. Just getting up every day, getting up and getting dressed, and getting a shower and making yourself up to how you want people to see you, and then pretending all day that you're fine, was absolutely exhausted. It was like I was living inside a bubble that, you know, inside that bubble there's this real me, but outside, or from the outside, everyone just saw what I wanted them to see. And I didn't know that that was a thing. And getting up every single day was absolutely exhausting, and then going back going back home, going back to bed and thinking I'm going to do this all again. And as I say, I felt like I couldn't enjoy the things that I'd usually do. And I think that's why it's very easy for us to say to people, you know, try and be around the people that you usually like, or do the things that you would do, or exercise, or, you know, listen to music. I couldn't listen. It was like my head would tell me I should feel a certain way, but my heart and my body couldn't feel it. I couldn't enjoy the things I'd normally enjoy. I couldn't be around the people I'd usually want to be around. I couldn't listen to music and hear it. I couldn't go to the Everton match and enjoy myself. And that's a bad example because they're really, really bad. But I couldn't even get angry at the football. And so I didn't know that this was a thing. And importantly, because I didn't know this was a thing, I didn't ask, and I didn't tell, and I didn't speak to anybody else, because I thought that the way that I was feeling was just being a grown-up. I thought it was just adult life. And I thought if I was to say to somebody, do you know what, I'm feeling like this, that they go, well, yeah, everyone is. That's just life. It's just a little bit rubbish. You just have to just be a little bit better at dealing with it and getting on with it. And I thought it was very much a me problem. I thought it was very much me having to adjust and adapt and be better at dealing with how I was feeling. And so I didn't ask, I didn't seek support. And instead I started to try and find ways of coping. But unfortunately for me, because I had no idea of that bigger picture and what was going on, my ways of coping were unhealthy. So it wasn't anything too serious, but it was avoiding things, and it was not going out and not seeing people, and making excuses all the time, and separating and cutting ties, and just completely just leaving everybody else behind. But also, it was probably drinking too much. Thinking if I have a drink, then maybe I can be me. Maybe if I get drunk, I can be around people, I can dance, I can sing, I can have a laugh, and I can be me again. I just forget everything. But then you do that, and then you wake up the next morning feeling worse, and so then it becomes a vicious cycle. And one of the things that I was really struggling with when I was going through all this was the idea of being a man and what that meant, and these stereotypical thoughts I had in my head of what it meant to be a man, to be big, to be strong, to be able to protect myself, protect others, all of these things. And I felt so incompetent as a man. I just felt so small. I felt so weak. I felt dwarfed by every single person I would see. It didn't help that my mum could grow a better moustache than me. You know, like that really got to me. But it was something that just constantly was on my mind. And every time I had a drink, I got Steve there, sorry, Steve. Every time I had a drink, those feelings would come flying out. And it'd often be as paranoia, and it'd be as aggression. And I can't really stress enough how different that person going through that was to who I am and who I was before and who I am now. And it would get me into different situations, and it get me into fights. And one day it got me into a fight with a bouncer in a club. Now, I know you can't really see me, but you would be surprised to hear that I lost that fight. I ended up in hospital getting my head glued back together. But you should have seen him. He was absolutely fine. But it was a significant moment for me. And the reason why I'm telling you all of this will be apparent. I said, oh, I'm going to sue this club, I'm going to sue this sponsor. And I went to a solicitor. And the solicitor said to me, you know, as a way of bolstering your case, it would be really good if we got you some CBT. And I thought, do you know what? When somebody offered it to me on a plate, when somebody said, do you want some therapy? Do you want these counselling sessions? And they phoned me and said, we can do this for you. I thought, yeah, I think I do. But I would never have gone and tried to find that help myself. But when that pathway was there, when it was offered on a plate, I thought, yeah, I'll take this. Now, I didn't know what was going on, but I knew that I wasn't myself. So I did, and I went to the sessions. And truth be told, I probably wasn't really ready for that process. I did go in under one reason, which was this event that had happened. But obviously I knew there was a lot more to it. And I have to say, when I did go in, the counsellors made me feel safe and secure. And she was the first person to say to me, I think that you might be depressed. They said, and I think maybe what you should do is go to a doctor and try and speak to the doctor about some medication. Now, I remember at the time I was 22, 23. I remember at the time when she said about medication, I thought, absolutely not. I said, why would I want medication for my mental health? I said, there's absolutely no way that I'm doing that. I said, I don't want to be addicted to it. I don't want to be reliant on it. I don't want to have to take medication in order to be me. No, I didn't want to do it. Eventually I did, and I went to a doctor. It did actually take me a couple of doctors before I was actually felt like I was believed. I went into a doctor's and they said, how can I help? And I said, I think I'm depressed and need antidepressants. And he said, why do you think that? And I said, well, I've been seeing a counsellor and she told me. And he said, well, I'm the doctor, not her, so I'll tell you what you've got. And I left feeling really, really vulnerable. I walked out. But I did keep going back, and I kept going back to the counsellor as well. But what I was doing in my life when I was going through that really horrible, weird time was that I lied to everyone. I lied to absolutely everybody in my life about what I was doing, who I was with, where I was going, how I was feeling, everything. And I'd done that almost as a way of protecting myself, or what I thought was protecting myself. And I went into these sessions and I started to lie there as well. Because I was going in and I was opening up about things and thinking, oh God, leaving, feeling sometimes worse, getting in the car, going home, pretending all again, lying again to everyone, not telling anybody that I was going, and then having to cover it all back up and go again next week and open it all up again. And I thought, oh, just tell her what she wants to hear. But I became so good at doing that actually I was discharged as being healthy and made a great recovery. And she told me she's really proud of me. And I remember leaving those sessions and thinking, after being discharged, I thought, well, that's it. You know, that's it. That's your chance gone. It's blown. Because in my head and in my knowledge, my understanding, which was very, very lacking, I thought we only have two chances to get better. One of them, medication, which I didn't know if I wanted to be on, and the other was counselling, which I'd just been discharged from. So I thought, that is it. You've played your cards. That's it. And so you just have to just get on with it. You just have to just manage. And so I did. I'd done my absolute best, and you know what? Some days were okay, but most days felt that same struggle, that same energy every single day. And then one day, everything just felt too much, and out of the blue, I got a thought in my head that said, "Why don't you take your own life?" And I'd never thought that before, and thankfully, I've never thought that since. But I thought about it from every single angle, and it made absolute sense. And for me, at that moment in time, it it wasn't a selfish thought. I was thinking about everybody. I was thinking about everyone in my life. I was thinking about my mum and my dad and my girlfriend. And it made sense. And so I took myself to a quiet area and I tried to take my own life. And there was a little moment, there was a moment when I was doing it and a little boy ran past the car that I was in. It's parked up. And one thing that I wanted more than anything in the world was to be a dad. That's what I always wanted. And I thought, convinced myself, absolutely, utterly convinced myself that I would never be able to be a dad, that I wasn't capable of being a man, that I wasn't capable of looking after myself, never mind a child, that medically, convinced myself medically I could never be a dad. So when this little boy ran past, I thought, well, I'll stop because I don't want him to see. I'm not going to be a dad, but I can maybe prevent this little boy from seeing something not nice. And so as he got out of sight, I carried on. And at that moment in time, my girlfriend at the time turned the corner and found me. She didn't know where it was. I turned my phone off and it was a really obscure road, but she found me before it was too late. She'd already phoned the emergency services, in particular the police. And she took me home to her mum's house. And the police came out to see me and they sat opposite me and said, "How are you feeling?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm okay." And he said, "Well, you're not going to do that again, are you?" And I said, "No." And then he said, "Good." And then he left. And he didn't say, "Are you receiving any help?" He didn't say, do you want me to help find support?" He didn't offer me any advice at all. And I'd say that was the most vulnerable I've ever been. Not when I was suicidal. When I was suicidal, right or wrong, I felt like it was my decision, it was my choice, it was my actions. To come out of that, to not only have to face my girlfriend, my parents, the reality, the lies, the everything, all the deceit, everything, the things that I was about to do, to not know if I was ever going to get better, to not know if I had a criminal record, as daft as that might sound, but I didn't know. I'd been visited by the police. That was the most vulnerable I've ever been, not knowing how or when or if I would ever be better. And so I felt like a naughty boy, and I felt quite alone. However, in many, many ways, that was actually the turning point for me. Because although I felt alone, actually, for the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone. Because suddenly, everything I tried to hide from, everything that I tried to escape, everything that I covered up, how I was feeling, all the reasons why I didn't tell anyone the truth, suddenly was out there. And the reaction of my parents and the reaction of my girlfriend was actually the complete opposite of all the reasons why I didn't tell them. They didn't use it against me. They didn't judge me. They weren't angry at me. They took it seriously. They were compassionate. They had absolutely no idea what to do. But they told me that. And they said, "We don't know what to do, but we will make sure that we are here." And so I wasn't alone, and that was one of the biggest turning points for me. And I know that I was very lucky not to be alone, because not everybody's situation is the same. I went back to the doctors, but they didn't have an appointment, so I had to phone. I had to phone up, and the doctor on the phone said, "How can I help?" And I said, I tried to take my own life yesterday. And he said, "Okay, you're on medication?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Just double it." And when I put the phone down, that was actually the last time I did speak to anyone about my mental health, because I thought, well, that's not any help. So I tried to rebuild my life with my family, with my girlfriend. And we went away, went on holiday, we came back. It took a couple of months. And when I came back, I noticed on social media that some people had heard about what I'd gone through. And so we're talking about it and we're mocking me, if we're being honest, that's what was happening. And I decided this one day that if I was going to move on in my recovery, and I pretended for so long, that I needed just to own it. Maybe another day it might have pushed me over the edge, but actually this one day just gave me that fire to say, no, I'm owning this. I'm going to take it. And so I put tweets out and I said, this is how I felt. This is what I've been going through. This is what I've done. This is how I tried to do it. This is how everything, put it all out there. Nobody's got anything on me. I'm trying to get better and trying to move on. And what happened as a result of those little tweets was people started to get in touch. People saying, I feel the same way. people saying I've been through it, people I knew. And then those tweets started getting picked up because of my background in comedy, getting picked up by local papers and then by national media. And then I was being asked by other charities, can you go on television to talk about this? Can you go on radio to talk about this? I was going into you know, newspapers like The Guardian, and stories were being shared by people like James Watson and James Corden, Emma Watson, going to millions and millions of people. And I had absolutely no idea if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but every time somebody said to me, can you speak about it? It will help people. I said yes. And I remember every single time I gave an interview, whether that was on primetime television like the Lorraine Kelly show, or whether it was on a obscure radio show in the middle of the night, every single time I gave an interview, every time people got in touch with me. Every time people got in touch asking me for help. And I had no idea what to do. I wasn't somebody who was unique or special, talking about something that was unique or special. In fact, it was literally the opposite. I was telling people something that they related to, that they understood, that they could say, I feel the same way. And people were getting in touch with me, a complete and utter stranger, finding my details. And every time I'd say to them, have you spoken to somebody about this? They'd say no. And I realized there and then the importance of that lived experience. Me going on and saying, I felt this way, was enough for somebody to say, I feel that way. It was enough for somebody to say, I'm going to reach out to this person to find his details, to find his email address, to find his personal Facebook and tell him for the first time ever how I feel. That's really personal information. But I realized that there was a huge responsibility that came with sharing that story. It wasn't just going on talking about this and leaving. But as I said, I didn't know what to do. But I realized that I did have that responsibility. And so that's why I created a charity. And what I wanted to do with our charity, which is a national mental health charity, was I wanted to really harness that lived experience. I really wanted to grasp that lived experience, voice and face, not mine, but as many people as we can, to show people that they're not alone. Because this was hundreds and thousands of people who were getting in touch with me, going through very much the same thing at the same time, all feeling like they were the only ones. And so I wanted to create a charity that spoke like people, not using jargon or clinical language, that spoke like ordinary people and appealed to people who maybe would never engage with that mental health sector. But every single time people came to me and said, I feel this way, and believe me, they were some heavy messages I was getting. Sat in my room in my mum's house, people telling me how bad they felt, people telling me that they were suicidal and needed me to talk them out of it. I had no idea what to do. I wasn't somebody who was unwell, got help and got better. But when they would come to me, I was like, okay, well, I need to try and find what this help is. And so that's kind of where I started to learn. I started to learn about mental health, and I started to learn about the issues surrounding mental health, and particularly the help and support that is or isn't available. I'd say that we have two major differences when we talk about mental health compared to how we talk about physical health. One of the things I would say is how we interpret it. So if I was to say the word physical health to you as a group, I won't ask you to put your hand up or shout out, because I'll say the answer that I want to be right, and then it works better that way. But if I said the word physical health, just think in your mind of any words that you would associate that. What's the images in your head when I say physical health? I'm going to guess. When I say physical health, I'm going to guess that you're thinking of exercise, that you're thinking of eating well, that you're thinking of looking after yourself. I'm going to think when you say physical health that you're thinking of something positive, that you're thinking of something aspirational. It might be a version of yourself in peak physical fitness, even if you're not there yet, you'll know the things that you can do to look after your physical health and reach that physical peak. We know we've all got it and we all look after it. If I say the words mental health, again, I'm guessing, but I guess you're going to think depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, panic attacks, suicide, eating disorders. You're thinking of mental illness. When we say physical health, generally people wouldn't think cancer, heart attack, stroke, diabetes, because you look at it as a much bigger picture. Just like with our physical health, we all have mental health, and just like with our physical health, we want our mental health to be as good as it possibly can be. We can look after it every single day. Instead of separating mental health as those who are unwell, we need to be looking at it as this is absolutely all of us. There'll be things in our lives that affect our mental health every single day. It doesn't mean that you become mentally unwell, but it might mean that you're just coping or that you're struggling. But if we look at how we do look after our physical health, is that if you think of a child as young as they can talk, if that child says, I don't feel well, we encourage that conversation as early as we possibly can. What type of not well? Is it your tummy? Do you have pains? Is it your throat? Is it your head? Do you feel sick? Encourage that conversation from the earliest possible age. We've got little kids every day playing doctors and nurses, trying to look after people and know that that's a process of getting better. If we're struggling with our physical health, we feel like we know ourselves enough. We feel like we know our bodies enough to know when something is not right. And we also know the capabilities that we have to look after our physical health. And we know the limitations of that. So you may feel physically unwell, and you might try different things, might try and have a sleep, take some paracetamol, have a bit of water, try and eat well, all these different things that we might do, but we know the limitations. If we go, oh, nothing's working, we'll go to a doctor generally. If we go in with symptoms and we explain to a doctor, I feel this way, and that doctor says to us, take this medication, take these antibiotics, take whatever this might be, generally we don't say no. We don't say, I don't need medication to feel better. We don't say, I don't want to be reliant on this. I don't want to be dependent on this. And generally we see that medication as a short-term fix to be able to hopefully feel a little bit better and then be able to look after ourselves again. If that medication our doctor gives us for our physical health doesn't work, we go back. We say I'm getting side effects or it's not really helping. We give ourselves enough respect to say, I can challenge this. And if it gets really bad, we'll go to hospital because we know, we understand and we trust the process of getting better. We respect that process. But with our mental health, we don't know, understand or trust the process of getting better. We don't necessarily know where the help and support is. We don't know how to access it, when to access it. We don't give ourselves enough respect to know, actually, I'm going to ask for this help and support. The stigma, there's loads of different things that play a part in this. But generally, it comes down to that education. We're not actually talking about what to do and how to find access, help and support and when to do it. And so we have things where we say, talk about our mental health, which is great. But once we do talk, what happens then? And so again, think of somebody that you might know, and we say, talk about our mental health. If they came to you and said, I'm struggling with mental health, would you know what to do? Would you know where to point them? So when these people were coming to me saying, I'm feeling this way, I had absolutely no idea what to do. So I put out an appeal and I said, if you offer any mental health support, tell me who you are. And I'll put it in a list so that when people come to me, I can tell them the support that's around. And that list started to grow and grow. And it went from 20 to 50 to 200 to 500 different services saying we exist. And it just kept growing and growing. And what I realized really quickly was, one, that there was loads of help that I didn't know, but also, why do I hold this? Why do I hold this information? It shouldn't take somebody to have to find my details to come to me to find this information. that I've got. And so I wanted to make it as publicly accessible as we possibly can and as easy to navigate and find help and support as possible. One of the best examples I could think of, which probably says more about me than anything, well, I can get on a train in Liverpool today. I don't know if trains are working at the moment, but let's just imagine imagine a world with no strikes. I could get on a train today and I could travel to Devon. I've never been there before. But if I want a curry or I want a kebab or I want a pizza, I go on an app and I say what's nearby and I'll find it. And I make a decision based on what I feel like. I wanted to take that same concept and put that into mental health services. And so we developed something called the Hub of Hope. There's a website and an app which is completely free to use. It's hubofhope.co.uk or free on the app stores. And it's the Just Eating mental health services. So we wanted to make something that's so easy that you can just type in a city, a town, or actually nothing at all. Just press a button that says find nearby services. It will use location and it will show you the support that's around. NHS support, but also voluntary sector, private support, peer support groups that aren't necessarily constituted, but do a walk and talk or a knit and natter or a coffee morning. Give people all the options, give people all the choices, and make that as easy as possible for people to find the help and support that they need when they need it. And now the Hub of Hope has grown into the biggest and most comprehensive mental health signposting of its kind in the UK. So it's now used by NHS England, NHS UK, Departments of Health. We now have signposting partnerships with organisations like Mind, who make us their official signposting partner. What was that? Someone talk? Was that me? Meant to be me. We have this. We partner with NHS trusts and ICBs and ICSs and ITVs and CNNs. I can't remember what so many different things. Where we can say you can use it. We've built this. And we're good at it. We've got a team of people now. But it's there to be used. We've got to work collaboratively and we've got to work consistently so that people everywhere know that there's one place you go and you can find all the help and support. So for example, when we work with NHS trusts, we allow them to have admin access to it, populate it with their services, embed it into their single point of access web pages, into their community transformation programs, use it as their signposting tool. Because it's not just about working in silos. I know right now I'm talking to a group of NHS workers, but the NHS is amazing, but it's also under immense pressure. And there's organisations out there that can help alleviate that pressure and help people feel healthy and keep people healthy in their communities. And we should absolutely be working together and we can bridge that gap. And so that's what we're able to do by a very, very simple concept. That is not rocket science, because if it was, it wouldn't be me doing it, believe me. We developed a training program, very similar, very simple, very short, very cheap. A group of finance people in NHS probably disagree with the word cheap, but cheapish, cheaper than other providers. But again, making it accessible to as many people as we can, so it doesn't matter that you work for an organisation who might only train 10 people, 50 people. Let's get everybody. Let's do absolutely everything that we do with lived experience at the absolute core. Because it is absolutely crucial that people know that they are not alone in this. Everybody has mental health, and as I said, there's things that will affect us all differently, and that's absolutely right and correct and okay. And if you can access help and support at an earlier stage, and you talk about mental health every day, and you look after your mental health every single day, it'll be a lot easier to keep well. I look back at my kind of journey that I described, you know, when I was leaving those sessions after lying to that counsellor as a way of protecting myself, if I would have known that maybe one, I could have been talking to people about going through that process, but also if I would have known that the hub of hope was there and that there was hundreds of support networks around me, maybe I would have reached out to somebody else in that meantime, in that week, to debrief almost, to be around with the people who got it. If the police officer would have come to see me and left me with a card for the hub of hope and said, there's help and support out there, then maybe that would have been the difference between me or somebody else attempting again. You've got to give people hope. I talked about, you know, the idea of being a man and being a dad, and the girlfriend at the time who saved me. That girlfriend is now my wife, and we've got 2 children together. We don't love each other. It's just better for the story. Don't tell her. She might hear that. I'll look over my shoulders if she's there. She tends to be. But I can't tell you how impossible that felt. I could have thought about it forever, trying to work out a path of how I could have got from where I was to where I am today, and it would have been impossible. I would never, ever have known. But the point is, you don't have to know. You don't have to know that entire journey, that entire path. All you have to know and think about is that next step. And that next step can be as big or as little as you want it to be. That next step can be telling somebody what you're feeling. That next step can be asking for help. All you have to worry about is that next step. No matter how dark it is, no matter how impossible it seems, there's absolutely always a way through, and there's absolutely always hope. I can absolutely promise and guarantee that. That's what we're here to do. That's what we will continue to do. And we will work with as many people as we can to get that message out to as many people as possible. I don't actually have an ending, so that's the ending. But I do believe that we've got like a couple of minutes, and I'm really, really happy to take any questions that anybody may have. So yeah, however people may want to do that, I'm happy to answer any questions in the next couple of minutes. I think I've got 2 or 3 minutes.
Thank you so much, Jake. I think you can definitely count on about 150 people here spreading that message. What a brave story. So thank you so much for sharing it with us. If anybody's got any questions, if you want to pop your hands up in the chat. Donna?
Yeah, I can only echo the comments that everybody's been making, Jake. So thank you so much for sharing your story. I work across health and social care, rather than, and I know we're a body of NHS finance people here, but I just wondered what engagement you're getting potentially from local authorities, and certainly, and my second point is your observations potentially from the position you're in, of the services people with acute mental health issues get in hospital, because that's quite a significant issue, and I think for most areas really. So no, they're my 2 points, but thank you. No, yeah. So in all honesty, Donna, we will and are eager to work with everybody, as many people as we can. That's from you know, NHS trusts and ICSs and ICBs to local authorities and emergency services, and absolutely everyone, is including you know, private sector. So some of our partnerships include Network Rail, NCP car parks, Premier League, pub groups. You know, what we are trying to do is get to where people are, and I think we need to move away from a model that we only give people that information as they come in. You know, it's all well and good as putting signs, and you know, we have literally, this is literally a sign. It's all well and good as putting that up in the clinical environment, but we need to be getting out there to where people aren't engaging. You know, supermarkets, everyone is who we work with, and local authorities absolutely are part of that list as well. So anyone who comes to us, we'll try and find as many people as we can, but anyone who comes to us, we will say yes to a partnership with, and we'll find a way of doing it. Public buildings, you know, changing those type of environments around people, giving people access to internet who maybe don't have it, because obviously it's a web-based platform. You know, every like a local authority has a huge role to play in that as well. So social care and everything is part of our plan. Yeah. See another hand?
Yeah, Nelly.
Thanks, Jake. Thank you very much for sharing your story with us. So my question would be, well, I've had an experience where a friend of mine has her daughter on a waiting list to be seen for mental health issues. And unfortunately, she's rung a couple of times and they've told her, the first question they ask, has your daughter attempted to harm herself? And when she says no, they say, unfortunately, we can't move you up the list. And that's extremely sad, because at the end of the day, we don't want them to get to that point where they want to end their lives. So I guess my question is, as friends and family members, what is it that you think we could do to help? And I'm asking this question because sometimes people are not open to share. So if you think back when you were at your lowest and you were not ready to open up or to discuss with anyone, even your loved ones, what is it that you think they could have done to help you?
Yeah, it's obviously it's really complex, and I mean the point that you make there about I'm never not shocked to hear that, but I do hear it quite often, that, you know, we know that thresholds and waiting lists within a number of services are so high that it is, as horrible as that is, it's very, very common, is that, well, if you're not suicidal right now, or if you're not taking action right now, then we have to wait until you do, which is nonsensical when we hear it out loud like that, and wrong. To answer your question, what can you do? It's obviously extremely difficult. And looking back at my family, they probably knew that something was wrong, but didn't know the extent. One of the biggest things that I would say is being able to share, say if it is the Hub of Hope, share outlets of this help and support to that person as well. And it can be very subtle. You know, we've got posters and cards that people can get in touch with us, or you can download them off our website. You know, even if it's putting something on the fridge, putting something somewhere that they can see it, they can pick it up in their own time. It's not backing somebody in the corner and say, we know that you're not well, so do something about it. It's taking it every day. It's talking about yourself. It's talking about my mental health, or talking about a talk today, talking about good mental health, you know, talking about things that you can do to look after it, you know, sharing your own without pinning it on somebody. And that's really important for us to do that anyway, every day. If you're talking about your mental health when it's good, it'll be a lot easier to talk about it when it's bad. But ultimately, if you are worried about somebody, you know, sometimes we worry about the awkwardness around it, but have the conversation. That conversation doesn't have to be, you know, if I was worried about one of my friends and I said, come round to my house and sit on my couch and let's talk about our feelings, they'd say no. But if I said, actually, do you want to go for a walk or a drive, or, you know, we do something as a distraction, and then that actually opens up that conversation. It doesn't have to be a really intense conversation. It can be, you know, as in the, it's the best way to do it in the most natural environment and natural way, and natural way that you speak as well. You don't have to change the way that you speak in your tone. But it's important to have the conversation. And finally, on that point, yeah, absolutely, we know that people are on waiting lists, but just because you're on a waiting list doesn't mean that you can't go somewhere else. Just because you are waiting to be seen from an NHS service doesn't mean that you can't go and get other support. And even if you are receiving NHS support, doesn't mean that you can't go somewhere else as well. So give people options, give people the options of support that they have, and know that there are different options. So yeah, hopefully that's a roundabout way of answering that question. But obviously I appreciate that this is actually a live situation, and if I can help in any way, please do get in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. I don't see any more questions in the chat, so I'm going to wrap it up at that point.